Welcome back to Pure Oxygen. Well, with the relatively dovish Colin Powell on board, the Bush administration braces for possible military action against a familiar foe. Iraq yesterday, the president stated, quote, Saddam Hussein needs to understand I'm serious about defending our country, end quote. But is this a necessary step in the war on terror, or does President Bush simply want to finish what his father started? That's the question for our C-SPAN panelists, Deidre Levine, Jennifer Baumgartner, and Lisa Pinto. All right, welcome, everyone. Lisa, let me begin with you. In the past, Secretary Powell has been more of a diplomatic guy, wanting to take a diplomatic approach with Iraq and Saddam Hussein. Now he's saying we need to topple his government, basically. Why this switch all of a sudden?
I think since the beginning we've seen a split within the administration about how to handle the question of Iraq. We had the hawks on one side, the diplomats on the other. But they are one team, and he's a good foot soldier, Colin Powell. And now the realization is steps have to be taken to bring down Saddam Hussein. The language he's using right now is economic and political means. He says there's no military plan in front of the president to topple the regime. And
yeah, but I mean, behind those words, he's obviously talking about military action at some point.
I think what's going on is they're trying to rally the Kurds to our side, who were so bitterly disappointed in the past. We left them out to dry in '93, and try and get their support for to take on Saddam Hussein's regime without angering the Turks, who are, of course, the neighbors and don't want to see a separate Kurdish state.
Well, Deja, I wonder, is his change of opinion because of the administration? I mean, did he feel some pressure? Did he feel like he was a wimp because he was, alone on this whole idea of diplomacy instead of taking action?
Well, he's been taking the position that a Secretary of State should take, which is that we should try and work through diplomatic means. And I think that in terms of Iraq, it's a very unstable region. We left it that way. It's in many ways our fault that it still is that way. He knows that better than just about anybody else. And so the ways that we're going to respond to that are not just military. The ways that we're going to respond to that are exactly as Lisa said. We have to do it economically, and we have to make sure that the support...
Worked.
Yeah, we've done the economic sanctions.
It hasn't worked.
We've even done the bombing. That never even ended.
That didn't work either.
Right. We need to, well, it has to be a comprehensive plan. And I think that part of what Colin Powell's problem is within the administration is that he sees this as a larger picture. This isn't about a war that we're fighting today against Iraq. This is, as mentioned, a war that was started by the former
Bush. We're talking about several years now that have passed since we actually tried to do something and we backed out. We didn't finish the job, and they've had that many years to rebuild whatever we destroyed. Now they apparently have these weapons of mass destruction. I mean, this is something, obviously, if we continue to try this diplomatic route, it's not going to get us
They've even
anywhere.
now just said that they won't let the United States go there to inspect, the UN military inspection team to inspect their, what we think are weapons of mass destruction.
That's been going on for 3 years. They call them the dogs of the UN Commission. No, clearly we're going to get Saddam, but the question is, do we have special forces on place right now marking targets, and do we have the hardware to back them up with bombing? And thank God we put $48 billion into defense, because we can build more of these. Yeah, but for real, because that's how we took out the people in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
and that's what we're going to do now.
I think that it's true that we can't just keep sort of doing the halfway version, and if Bush, has some sense of resolution about this is probably a good thing. We do need to have something happen, but I think it's probably going to end up, and I think this is what Colin Powell is sort of foreshadowing, it's going to be that some insurrection within Iraq we support. Right. And we, as Americans, might not know so much even about exactly what's going down, but legitimately support, because this has happened before, what we thinked out at the last second.
Right, right. But okay, here's my question, though. In the past, the U.S. has always not kind of taken the stance of, all right, we're going to take the high road. All right, we've been attacked. The U.S. as whole was attacked. Our embassies have been attacked. And we've never really taken a hardline stance and just gone for it. I mean, are we getting to the point of other nations thinking, we can take advantage of the U.S. They're not going to do anything.
I think we've been in real danger of that happening. For nearly 20 years, we haven't responded appropriately to most of the military actions that have happened against us, most of those actions happening against our military. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't responded in kind. The September 11th happened
during the Clinton administration, when the Cole was attacked during the bombing of '93.
Was the Clinton administration 20 years long?
No, somebody please. I wish. Do the math. 9 years of letting terrorists destroy hard targets on U.S. and foreign soil, and that's the mess we're in now. A defector from Iraq said that they're building their military, they're building their nukes, they're building their weapons. Better to act now than later, and I think that's what we're preparing for.
So are we going to do it, though? Are we going to just sit around and talk about it, or are we going to actually do something about it?
I think we are. I think we even have bipartisan support. I mean, somebody was talking about how Al Gore even is saying that Iraq is a virulent threat. It's true. and Al Gore is saying he does represent, as much as people don't seem to care what he thinks, he actually has a lot of inside knowledge as well from being part of that terrible Clinton administration.
Suppose we do take action against Iraq. I mean, of course, there's various scenarios going around. One is that because they have weapons of mass destruction, it could be a horrible repercussions for the U.S. and its allies.
Better now, before they perfect those weapons of mass destruction. Al Hadari, the defector I was talking about, he says that these weapons are getting stronger and stronger. So if we take them out now, especially before Uday, the son of Saddam, ascends the throne, as it were.
Who they say is like even crazier, right?
Even more psychotic than his father. It's obscene to even try and believe. But
So-
he has the potential for being even harsher to his own people than his father has
Let me
been.
take a cynical approach to all of this. Bush, of course, is, has approval ratings of 90% at least, right? And they've been pretty consistent. Is this a tactic, and I know this is quite cynical, but maybe it's true, is this a tactic for the Bush administration to maintain this popularity by trying to continue this war, this, attack on terrorism, and trying to use that to maintain his popularity?
That's ridiculous, May. Somebody blew himself up yesterday in Yemen. I mean, going after U.S. targets. How can you say that with a straight face?
But she can and she should, because
Clinton
this
was
has
certainly
Thank you very much.
This has historical context. In 1948, Harry Truman did this, the big war scare of 48, and it had no grounding in reality. Russia had never been nicer to us since the end of the war.
We all heard of a small band of
I'm not
thugs
saying,
across
Lisa, that the
10,000
threat-
graduates of terror
I'm
camps
not saying
waiting
that
to
the
kill us.
threat is not real. The threat is real, and we need to treat it as such, and we need to be aggressive in our military approach. At the same time, we have to recognize that the president does benefit from extending the war talk as long as he possibly can.
And also, Clinton was totally accused of this because he was in the middle of his Monica Lewinsky problem when he started bombing Iraq, and everybody was just like, give me a break.
But this president is squeaky clean. I mean, there is an axis of evil, and he's going to take
An
it out.
axis of evil comprised of nations that hate each other and one that has nothing to do with the other two. So axis, I don't know where that comes from.
They're funding the Lebanese, they're funding Hezbollah. It's dangerous to us, it's dangerous to Israel. We need stability in the Middle
All
East.
right, well, up next, we're going to change the subject. Teens may just say no to drugs and cigarettes, but will this approach work when it comes to sex? We'll debate this topic when we come back. You're watching Pure Oxygen. Welcome back to Pure Oxygen. Well, last week, President Bush announced a 33% increase in federal funding for abstinence education, a concept which implores kids to just say no without providing safe sex information. But can randy teens learn how to control their hormones, or would safe sex education be more effective? We're back with our She-SPAN panel, Deidre Levine, Jennifer Baumgartner, and Lisa Pinto. All right, everyone, let's start off right off the bat. Take off your pundit hats for a second. We were all young once, right? Not that we're ancient now. I know. All right. Anyway, how did you guys learn about sex education, all of that stuff? I mean, was it from school or was it through magazines, TV? I mean, Jennifer.
Well, my dad's a doctor and my mom was one of those arbiters ourselves feminist moms. So I, at a very young age, knew a lot. And I told my friends, as best I could, I spread the word.
Oh, you spread the word.
So I was like a peer educator, basically.
So friend like you.
From how I learned on the playground from my friends, which was mostly like the words that weren't the real words, they were just the fake words. But then I really learned in probably sex education class, health education class, where they had a sex education component.
And Lisa?
I didn't have any of that. I went to private school. We were told if we had a male visitor that we had to keep 3 feet on the ground between the two of us.
Yeah, and I had health
wondering
classes.
how that works.
I had health classes in 7th grade, but it was my gym teacher who was trying to teach this, and so I didn't learn anything. So everything I learned was just by word of mouth and through the media. My parents, of course, never spoke about it.
So accurate to learn through word of mouth.
Right. So I mean, this whole increase in Bush's budget to teach abstinence without the other aspects of sex education. I mean, in my eyes, I think that's a horrible idea. But I mean, is this just sort of Bush throwing red meat to the religious conservatives to just make them happy?
I don't think so, actually. I think that he probably believes that he was a late in life convert to evangelical Christianity, and I think that even though this wasn't the way he was raised and certainly wasn't his experience, I think he thinks that maybe it could be a good way. But we don't have any, I'm just saying that, meaning that I don't think I'm being nice.
I think he's totally throwing a bone to the Christian right.
No, because
you do. Okay.
well, and it's very serious though what he's doing, because the jury is definitely still out about abstinence only. We haven't done really big full-scale tests about how it's going to be, but we do know that with our kind of not so great sex education that we already have, that's not comprehensive, that out of developed countries, the United States has by far the most adolescent pregnancies. 22% of women have their babies before they're 19.
That is amazing. So obviously there's a flaw in the system
flaw
right now.
Huge abortion rate based on how many pregnancies we have.
So Lisa, I mean, let's talk about sex education. I mean, what do you think about this? Teaching abstinence rather than also talking about safe sex, HIV, I mean, all of those things.
Teens don't value sex now, and I think that's the problem. I mean, a recent poll showed that when teenagers were asked about what was more intimate, heavy kissing or oral sex, they think heavy kissing is more intimate, and that's a sad state of affairs. So if we can get faith-based organizations promoting children to stay abstinent until they're married, or at least until they're old enough to handle the responsibilities of getting regular health checks, of being in a monogamous relationship, there's nothing wrong with that.
But
Let's match the funding.
But what about leaving out the other aspects of sex education, which is what this program is promoting?
But it's misleading to tell a teenager that a condom cures all ills, because it does not. A lot of boys carry condoms around in their pockets, never put them on. Condoms break. They don't prevent some of the STDs, and I think that's where we're misleading youth and doing them a disservice if we don't teach them that sex is something special to be kept for later in life.
Lisa, you almost had me until you said faith-based. I mean, why are we back to this faith-based thing again?
Because churches are the core of the community. Temples are the core of the community.
Churches do a good
religious
job.
organizations
education
provide
about health-related issues should not come from an organization that is really shutting the shutters on so much information that's out there. They don't talk about HIV, or when they do, they talk about it as a plague and a scourge on homosexuality. They don't talk about the options available to young women when they do get pregnant. No, we cannot have faith-based organizations teaching sex education.
Why? Because there's strings attached, you think?
Because there's strings attached, and they have such a closed-minded view of some of the options that are available out there.
Not all places do.
Not all places do. Thank you, Jen, for that correction. That's true. Not all places, but I'm saying if we go down that road, then we end up in the slippery slope of places where not all options are talked about.
Oh, this is a budget against self-gratification. Teenagers are doing everything now because it feels good. Pac-Man, oral sex, whatever they want. I think it's a great thing for the administration to say we're going to put some money behind just saying no.
Well, I agree with Lisa earlier when she said that condoms can't fix everything, and we shouldn't be teaching that that's the case, but we don't. We don't teach that that's the case. We're not lying to our children. What we need is more of an opportunity to get the real information out there, which can only come through education
so let me
funding.
pose this question to you. If there were a position in the cabinet that was called Sex Czar.
I
all
would
right?
be sex czar.
Okay, I think I would take a stab at it too myself. What would you want to do? What kind of program do you think would actually work then?
I've actually thought about this because I talk to younger people all the time, and I think I have one foot in reality. And I don't think this abstinence only does. I think I would use some existing organizations, probably some churches and faith-based places, and also Planned Parenthood, which is there's 800 Planned Parenthoods in the United States. They already do abstinence, support, and but they do the full range, comprehensive sex education. And I would have peer educators and role models that were celebrities that they trusted, because when a
Madonna's
50-year-old,
a great role model
no, not
for
her,
young
someone else that
teenage
they
women.
trust.
Whoa, baby,
Lisa,
have sex
God.
because it
Nobody's
feels
bringing
good
up
now.
Madonna.
We're
I see
obsessed
her
with
point.
Madonna.
I see
Really
her
work
point.
on
You
that.
know, I mean, teens
You don't want
are
to hear from a
influenced
middle-aged
by
person.
right.
They're
Exactly.
Like, yeah, easy for you to talk about being
That's true.
abstinent.
And we have to
Yeah,
have
that's
some
true.
reality, which is that a lot of teenagers are still going to have sex no matter how much abstinence you preach.
Yeah,
and if
but
they're going to have sex,
And
we
we
may
probably
You
as
might as
well
well
have
give
the
them a good
information out
education.
there.
All right, all right. Well, before we go, in honor of the suspected judging, right? We've all heard about this at the Olympics this week. We're going to ask our panelists to give their Olympic scores on what or whomever they like this week. So, Jennifer,
Okay.
I'm going to start with you.
I'm giving a 9.2 to Ken Lay for providing an object of derision for all the senators who didn't get all of their insults out back with the Anita Hill hearing,
Oh, yeah,
and
they
they
were
can use
going
all their
at it.
one-liners. I know.
That's a good one. All right, Lisa.
I'm giving China a 9 for totalitarian oppression, sentencing 5 Christian leaders to death for doing absolutely nothing wrong and torturing the alleged victims.
Oh, God. Well, that's not a news
depressing.
story. That's unfortunately in China. Yeah. All right.
I'm giving a 0.2 to
Ooh.
House Republicans, who really should have scored a 0 because of the hypocrisy and the almost satirical nature of the debate on campaign finance reform that they tried to block by attaching poison pill amendments. But they didn't. But I give them the 0.2 because they get some style, because it was a little bit interesting. So
Lisa
there.
is rolling her eyes right now as you speak.
There's
Okay,
a surprise.
I have 2 scores actually for today. I give a 9.8 to John Walker Lynch for actually having the balls to plead not guilty. All right, and I give him a big fat 0 for his patriotism. There we go. All right, thank you, ladies. See you next time. Up next, if your only dates on Valentine's Day are Ben and Jerry, what's wrong with them? You're in luck. A Valentine's Day guide for the single girl is straight ahead. You're watching Pure Oxygen.